Yeah.
knowing that his audience would back her
Yeah.
on the decision and she would have their support.
Well, now you're making people think that veganism isn't healthy.
There's so many people who are influencers. We can't control that, but we can control what we consume and what we believe.
Hey guys, welcome back to The Vegan View. So you may have heard that Miley Cyrus and Maddie Lymburner have recently announced that they are no longer vegan and that they've gone back to eating fish and eggs. So in this video, we're going to talk about what they've said about that and then also our reactions and how we felt about it.
And we will also be discussing a little bit about idolizing celebrities, social media culture, and why we think it's always fish and eggs that people tend to go back to at first. So we've talked about Miley quite a bit before, and we've had a lot of people request that we talk about this since we often cite a lot of things that she said. She wrote a song about a blowfish. She's a really outspoken ethical vegan, and she's really outspoken about how much she loves animals and how that informed her decision to go vegan.
So the way I found out about this was I saw somebody post on social media that Miley had done an interview with Joe Rogan. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, because I'm not the biggest Joe Rogan fan. I don't listen to his show, so I guess I can't really like say that. But from what I've heard of him, he just always seems to bash veganism. I just don't think I'm his target audience, so I don't enjoy listening to his stuff. But I thought, oh, Miley Cyrus went on. She's definitely going to school him on veganism and how it's something ethical. So, of course, I immediately YouTube Miley Cyrus, Joe Rogan, and one of the first things to pop up is Miley says she's no longer vegan. And I literally could not believe it. She's one of the last people I would have ever thought would go back on veganism just because of all of the quotes that she said and the song that she wrote and how it just really seemed to be so ingrained in her ethically. So of course I immediately texted you guys.
And I feel like we all had different reactions. It was kind of funny because for me, I just tend to, I feel like I'm really not trusting, and like that's my biggest problem as a person, as a human being. And so whenever celebrities and like big people go vegan, I'm a little wary because I know how much they just have so much more stress and pressure and eyes looking at them at all times. And so I know something that is as heartfelt as going vegan for ethical reasons, it can really like pick at you when you have so many voices kind of telling you not to do it and being against it. And so I just really never think celebrities are going to stay vegan, but I also don't think it like negates what they say when they are vegan about how much they love animals and how they think they shouldn't be killed for consumption.
Yeah, so Miley said that it was because she was having a hard time getting enough omegas in her diet and that she felt like her brain wasn't working properly. And I think it was more than she felt like it. She was working with, in the interview with Joe Rogan, she was talking about the psychiatrist and psychologist that she works with and like the tests that she was doing. And she was feeling like it just wasn't serving her. And I think that's a really common thing when people go back on veganism. It's usually because they feel like their body isn't responding to it, which I think is part of why it can be so scary when you hear that as a vegan, because it makes you second guess yourself. So when I heard it, I was also like NISHA, I wasn't super surprised. And I feel like a lot of it is because the lifestyle is just not very conducive to sticking to something just because you believe it, especially when in the interview, she was talking about how she really sees herself as an athlete because she has to perform under such extreme circumstances or within such extreme circumstances. And she has to have this grueling schedule that most people don't have to have. And so anytime that she feels like something isn't working or she's not feeling good, then she has all this, expert advice telling her that she needs to eat fish, she needs to eat eggs. And if people are telling you that, it doesn't matter how much you may not want to because of ethical reasons, you're being told that it's not healthy. And I think that weighs on you. But then I think it's always frustrating when you hear these stories because because what they're saying is like, oh, it wasn't healthy. And so then I feel like as a vegan, I get frustrated because I'm like, well, now you're making people think that veganism isn't healthy. Whereas like a lot of it from what she was saying was that her lifestyle is extremely different than most people's, and what her body is expected to do, the amount of stress and pressure is not like what most people have to encounter, so there could be a number of reasons why she was feeling the way that she was. So I think that's like my first reaction, unfortunately, is like I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And if they say they're not feeling well, like who am I to say that? Like, you know, like I want everybody to feel good and to live their best lives. But at the same time, there is a little bit of frustration like with the messaging around it. That's how I felt.
Yeah, she talked in the interview about how going out and just seeing like things on a newsstand about her being pregnant and her on drugs and her being like, only one of those are true. And she said she had to spend so much, she was realizing she was spending so much of her time trying to prove people wrong instead of just living her life. And I feel like that when she was talking about that, it was unrelated to veganism, but I was like, oh, that sounds very connected, because I feel like all of us have experienced spending so much of our time just being like, yo, we're fine. Like, I have to prove that my lifestyle is okay for me. And it's exhausting. It's really tiring. That's why we have like our Facebook group as a support group, as like a breath of fresh air for people, because having a support system who believes in you, who wants to uphold decisions you've made that make you feel good, that you believe in, is so important. And when you're someone who is of such fame and celebrity, you have so many people in your life. You have so many people in your life. Like, I cannot imagine, like, all of us also have so many people telling us mean things all the time, and it gets to you. And I can't imagine being someone like Miley Cyrus or Maddie Lymburner and having such a large audience and having people constantly and make videos about you, make fun of you, and have to spend your whole life proving that. It would be exhausting, and I can't imagine the mental health toll it would take. And so, of course, I think if I put myself in their shoes, would I love veganism as much after being so outspoken and putting a target on my back? Probably not.
I think that fear is so real. Like when you feel like people are looking at you and telling you what is healthy, what is not healthy. Oh, you don't look healthy. People make comments about the way you look all the time when you're an online person. And even if it comes from a good place, like some people will word the statement like, oh, I'm concerned about you or whatever. Like that stays with you, and it makes you second guess everything you're experiencing and all of your life choices. And I can't imagine that times a million on that scale. Like I really do have a lot of empathy for both of them.
Just to piggyback off of what you both are saying, is that it's exhausting on a personal level when you're not somebody that's like super famous or has to deal with things like that. Just dealing with family and friends is exhausting, like honestly, because I've been vegan now for over 5 years, and I still, every time I go to an event where there's food involved, it's always brought up, always, without fail. And it's a lot easier now because I've been vegan for so long that people are just kind of like, oh, it is what it is. They're not asking me questions about why, where to get your protein, blah, 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 blah. But it's still a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's still like, oh, we didn't get you anything. Sorry. Guess you're going to eat chips. Like, or like, oh, shoot, should we go get you something? And it's always like a thing. What are you going to eat? Did you get enough to eat? I feel like when you're somebody like Miley Cyrus, who has a whole team of people who really depend on you to perform and to be the best that you can possibly be, and they've all got their inputs and their opinions, then that would really influence you at a certain point. And it's already exhausting. There's already so much going on in the world that at a certain point, it's probably just like, whatever. I think when you have a really core group of vegans in your life, like I feel really lucky to have both of you and also Jesse, because when things like this happen, I'm just like, oh God, and I can immediately text you guys and like be like, am I crazy? Because it really does make you feel crazy. Like that was my first kind of reaction, like when she said that. And she says it's health reasons, because I know, we've all at different points in our life had health problems, and mine has been before I was vegan and while I was vegan. And I never even considered for a second, I'm going to start eating fish and that's going to solve all my problems. Right. I went to plant-based doctors and I went to regular doctors, and I explored all of my options to heal myself through plants, not go back on that. So it makes me feel a little insane when I'm like, that was my first reaction, was to go get help from a plant-based doctor. Why would that not be other people's first reaction?
And I think Mike the Vegan has a really good video about like all these different people going back to fish and eggs and kind of the mental thought process about everything that goes on with becoming an ex-vegan. And he does a really good job of that. So we'll link his video down below. But I think something really interesting that he talked about that you, Hannah, had texted us about was the vegan exhale, and just kind of the relief of not being vegan anymore, which we can all so understand that, because like the amount of energy we expend because veganism is a part of our business. So like it is a huge part of our identity. We're not just like vegan and an accountant. So we do spend a lot of energy like making sure products are vegan and like everything that goes along with that. But knowing other famous people or other influencers who have so many eyes on them, and then taking that label off of their brand or off of their personality, what a huge relief that must feel like. And especially when you're someone like Miley Cyrus, who has gone through a really public divorce and had horrible things written about her, who has been super, not edgy, controversial, who's been super controversial since like, I don't know, 16 years old. It's probably a huge relief to her to not be vegan anymore.
And not to say this is the case for Miley and Maddie, but as somebody who does social media, essentially is a marketing job, you have to turn down so many brand partnerships as a vegan because like NISHA said, like, you know, we're looking at what's in our products. We're looking at who makes them. It must be such a relief to be a influencer and to not have to worry about being vegan. I think it holds a lot of influencers back, honestly, because if you had any idea how many partnerships you would have to turn down if you're going to put your values first, I think that's like a factor that you can't really ignore. Again, not saying it's the case for these two, but yeah.
I think that's interesting. And I've thought about it, and I know we've talked about it with, in the conversations we've had about people who are no longer vegan. I think it's an interesting, like, I don't know that it's necessarily an exhale where like you're just relinquishing that like burden. Cause I think it's almost like kind of trading like a little bit of shame for shame. It's like before there was this shame associated with like having to constantly defend yourself and feeling like you're going against the grain. But now there has to be deep down this other shame that exists when you are like, let's say promoting a non-vegan product or eating a non-vegan food. It's like, there has to be a part of you that remembers how you felt ethically, and you have to reconcile with that each and every time. And like, what toll does that have on a person? And I would love if people would talk about that part of it, because I'm so curious to know, like, do you just shut that part of your mind off? Like, people always talk about when they go vegan, like it's like a flip and their mind was switched on. Do you just flip it back off? Like, how does that work?
I don't know if they necessarily do feel shame, because I know for a fact if I were to tomorrow go to my friends and family and say, hey guys, I'm no longer vegan, they would celebrate. They would be so happy. They would be so excited. They'd be like, we're going to go get steak. Like, they would love it. And which is so weird to me. But I know for a fact that would be the response. And they would be like, oh, we have our Hannah back. Like, because for 20 something years, I was eating meat and dairy. So
I mean, internal shame though, like
But when that decision is celebrated, and I know it because I know so many people who have stopped being vegan, when at first I'm sure you were like toying with the decision, it's really difficult. I'm sure it's extremely difficult. I mean, for some people it may not be difficult because you didn't really care, but in this case, I do see her, she really loves animals. And like, I'm sure it sucks she has to eat, like she thinks she has to eat animals, but the reception from the world itself and the majority is so nice. It is so nice to be agreed with and to be celebrated and to be commended on doing something that I feel like when shame is met with celebration and acceptance and open arms, it goes away. But something I think about a lot, I don't think I've talked about it before, is that like, I'm not sure that her eating fish and eggs or even not being vegan, if she really cares about animals, she could still do a lot to help the animals. Like, we have talked about this, like you can still practice a cruelty-free lifestyle. You can still lobby and get involved and vote for laws that will stop like compensation for farmers who have to like slaughter so many animals that are not even being bought, laws that will protect animals from being tested on. So there is so much you can still do, because like there are people I'm still friends with who have been vegan and then stopped being vegan, but they're really like balls to the walls with trying to get conditions better for animals, but they're going through things like eating disorders or other mental health issues or chronic diseases. And like, I have interstitial cystitis, and going through like being at a doctor's office and seeing so many doctors and having something that's like debilitatingly painful. Like, of course, I think a lot, like, if mine comes back so bad again that I like can't get out of bed and someone's like, you have to eat fish, and I like finally believed in it. I hate fish. I would probably not eat fish. But I know the mental toll, and we always say like, take care of yourself first and do what feels good. But like, there's still so much you can do, you know? Like, if you're having an eating disorder and you need to go back to a less, if you're finding veganism is like restricting you and like you need to go back, you just know in your heart, like, you're going to go back. You can do other things. Like, we don't hate you. Like, I see a lot of people attacking her personally and her ethics. We have no idea how much her and Maddie have been through just personally. Like, what everyone sees, even with each of our lives, is so tiny. And so, yeah, it's just like, I really don't think not being vegan makes you a bad person, but I also think like she shouldn't have just gone on there and been like, it's unhealthy, I can't do it, you know?
I think the thing that upsets me the most is that it's very rarely that the ethics are addressed. When these people come out and say they're not vegan anymore, it's almost always, I'm only going to talk about health. I'm not going to talk about ethics. I'm not going to talk about the struggle that I had to go back to eating fish. I'm just going to say that this was healthier, and like, and it is what it is. And like you said, NISHA, they can still do so much for the animals, but unfortunately, from what I've seen, they don't.
Yep.
And it's so frustrating to see somebody who literally built their platform off of being an ethical vegan buy a wool rug with no regards to the animals that were sacrificed for that rug. That's the part that really gets to me. And I have a hard time, you know, having compassion. And this is like my internal battle that I'm being honest about. Like, I know that compassion is the best way, but I have a really hard time with it when someone like Miley goes on of all shows and all platforms she could have used to say, hey guys, I'm no longer able to be vegan. She chose Joe Rogan, who literally is known for hating vegans.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so frustrating because she could have done that on her own platform, but yet she chose his, knowing that his audience would back her on the decision and she would have their support. And not only did she just only say like it was health reasons, she almost kind of bashed veganism in the process, where I feel like she could have said, ethically, this was really hard for me. You know, I didn't want to have to do this, but this is what I'm doing in the meantime. I still highly encourage people to be on a vegan diet. Yeah. She literally said to Joe, you're not vegan. You can't be, and be as sharp as you are and have a show like this. And that to me is like so unnecessary, that if you actually cared about the animals, you wouldn't have to put down veganism just because you had a bad experience with it, just because you feel like it's not good for your health. Like, you didn't have to drag it through the mud.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know why, but I don't know if you guys do this, you can let me know. But when people stop being vegan, I like always listen to their story. Maybe it's because I used to do acting, I don't know, but I always listen to their story and I'm like, what would I do? Like, if I had felt like that, like, And I'm always like, okay, like for me, my checklist would be like, hey, like this is what's going on in my brain that has made me go against my morals. And I would probably have like, this is what I'm still doing to help the animals. And I would try to like let people know, like, hey, if you're no longer vegan anymore, but you're really like suffering and you feel like shitty about it, like I'm going to be here. I'm going to be guiding you. Like, let's do this together. And hopefully in the future I can be vegan. Like, I would never want to negate the lifestyle itself because it is such a nice one. And I know it works out for so many people, myself included. And I just hate when people go out and they're like, everyone's wrong because this didn't work out for me because I'm not in a good mental health space, when like,
yeah, he said the vegans are going to come for you, and she said, I don't care if they come for me. People have been coming for me my whole life. And that to me is like, why would you not understand and have compassion? Like, I totally understand why they would come for me, because I've seen through their lens before, and you know, that's okay. I just hope they understand where I'm coming from. But I feel like we can't ignore, like you said, NISHA, the mental health aspect of it, and like the fact that we don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
For me, for chronic disease, when I talk about that, certain doctors won't see you if you're like have a weird dietary restrictions. They won't see you. And like when you're in pain and they're just not giving you help because of what you eat, it is that, like, for me, I remember just doctors not even wanting to give me medication because I'm vegan. It's just there is, because so many people are so publicly against it and they're like, oh, it's horrible for you, it's awful. I feel it's just like the status quo, and everyone, even doctors, start believing it's this really bad thing. And off of like going with what Maddie was talking about, she talked a lot about like hormonal imbalance. She saw a holistic doctor, and hormones are so complicated, and just the whole like the research and like blaming the hormone stuff, it just doesn't really line up. There are so many things that impact hormones, whether it be mental health, how much you exercise, what your stress level is like, how much you're working during the day. Like I have PCOS, and like one of the most helpful things was lowering like my stress level and learning how to manage stress, and like that really helped my blood tests and my PCOS. But like it's just too many things to pinpoint it on a vegan diet, and for such a short amount of time.
Right. That was really frustrating to me as well, because like you said, stress is such, people discount how much stress affects you physically. Like your gut health is affected by stress. Your adrenals are affected by stress. Like everything is connected to that, and your mind is so powerful. And when you're in a good mental place and you aren't stressed, your body is going to act so differently than when you are. I know for myself and so many other people who menstruate that I had a really great experience going vegan as far as my menstrual cycle goes. And again, was that just because of going vegan? Could be, but might not be. It might be other things as well. But to say that everything is because of a vegan diet, that is just, it's so weird to look at like just one thing, you know? I feel like you have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
I know Maddie a little bit, and I know her to be just like such a sweet, kind, caring person. And I know that like I feel like her approach was very different than with Miley's approach, like to what you were saying, Hannah. I feel like she's really someone who I think did it in a much better way in certain regards, where she was like, this was my health experience. Like she showed pictures. She was like, she admitted that it was like a number of different things that was taking a toll on her, and that this was like one thing that she was doing. And she also said that like, hopefully, I think I could be wrong with this, but I feel like she said that it's just a for now thing. She's been experimenting with her diet, and like, I think the thing with her was that she was like, it's a very small amount of animal products that I'm incorporating in to see if it works for me, versus like this whole like like what you said about like the wool rug, and like just totally like everything goes like baby out with the bathwater. And I think like if it is for health and it is like incremental change to see if it has an effect on you, that's a totally different approach than someone who's just like, veganism didn't work for me, I'm going to go on Joe Rogan and talk about how vegan bodybuilders are all on steroids. And it's like that kind of just like those kinds of blanket statements I think are really like you said, feeding into the base, and they just do such a disservice to a movement that is rooted in trying to live a compassionate and like responsible lifestyle. And so I think like with Maddie, I think that it will be interesting to see, because I know other YouTubers who have said like, I'm only just going to eat eggs and fish, and then they end up eating like eggs and fish multiple times a day, and then it's dairy, and then they're eating chicken again, and it's like this whole thing where it's like, I'm just going to eat a little bit of animal products and see, and now they're eating animal products multiple times a day. So I think it's interesting to see like how that will be, and like what her experience will be. But I think overall, just like doing it little by little versus just being like screw veganism
Yeah.
is really different. And so I do respect the way that she did it. And again, like we don't know what people's experience was like you said with your interstitial cystitis.
You can call it IC.
Thank you. Like that pain, I can imagine, like if you are in so much pain and like you're just going to do anything to get relief, and especially if doctors are telling you. But one thing I do think that is kind of a slippery slope too is a lot of times in these conversations, it's like people don't seek medical advice because they're afraid their doctor is going to tell them to eat fish or something. And I think like Hannah, you're such a good example of someone who was like, I'm going to see plant-based doctors, I'm going to see regular doctors, I'm going to really figure out how to do this responsibly, versus saying like, oh, doctors don't know what they're talking about, or naturopaths don't know what they're talking about. I think there really is like finding what works for you. If that's your goal, if maintaining that ethical lifestyle is the goal, there is a way.
Yes. And I think I totally agree with you. She went about it so differently. And like, while some of the information she gave, I'm like, oh, it's a little iffy. We are also just people on the internet. We're not experts. And like, speaking as someone who was an ex-vegan many times and now has been a vegan for 6, 7, I don't know. What year is it? 2020. Oh, what a year.
No.
6 years, 7 years, I don't know. But I stopped being vegan for so many times, and it was because it was overwhelming. It was because I had no support. It was because doctors wouldn't treat me. But now I'm vegan because I've like learned enough, and I'm very confident in my choices, and I also like really know how long it takes to have an effect on the body, for a diet to have an effect on the body, what really other factors can play into it, and like how incredibly impactful mental health is on physical health. And I really believe, we talk about this all the time, that one day people are going to look back and be like, whoa, they did not do any mental health care. They just took people to physical health doctors. And like anxiety and depression and all kinds of other mental illness have physical symptoms that we try to cover up with non-mental treatments.
Yeah. I think with Maddie, the thing that frustrates me is, and I think this is the perfect segue to talk about the fact that like influencers and even celebrities are just people at the end of the day, but she has, I think, over like 5 million subscribers or something on her Mad Fit channel. She has a ton of people following her for health and nutrition advice. And so I just feel like, you know, she's not a nutritionist. She's not a doctor.
Or a dietitian, because like the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian, like, oh my God, we talk about this all the time. There are nutritionists on YouTube who give like just opposite information. So
yeah, as if they're a registered dietitian, and they're not. I
have a certificate in nutrition, but I also had to sign something that said that I cannot legally give people nutrition advice, because I have a certification, and yet I can't give people advice. And a lot of people don't take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah, right. And I think maybe she doesn't fully understand her impact and her influence on people when it comes to diet, because when people are like super into fitness, they want to do everything that you're doing. They want to do the workouts you're doing. They want to eat what you're eating. They want to take the supplements that you're taking. And she has a huge, huge influence when it comes to that. So, you know, where she before, I think, probably influenced a ton of people to go vegan, which is amazing, and we can't ignore that. There might be some people now who were eating vegan who are like, oh, she's eating fish again, I probably should eat fish again. I don't want to mess up my hormones. I think when we pinpoint it on one thing like that, Mike the Vegan has a video as well that's amazing, and he talks about the placebo effect, where like you can think in your mind, fish is going to solve all my problems, eat fish, and then you will physically feel better because of the placebo effect. And it's a proven thing. And so I think like that could happen for her, that could happen for the people that follow her. And yeah, I think we just have to acknowledge the fact that like she's not an expert when it comes to menstrual health and diet, and that
can also go the same way with veganism. Like there are some vegans making some like outrageous claims about what vegan can do, but like the placebo effect is real. It's incredible, and it does work. It works. If you really believe something is going to do something, like it's going to do something, you know?
Totally.
But yeah, it's really interesting how celebrity and fame in today's society can equate to expertise, which it does not. And like, if I would have a little sister or a child who is growing up today, I would really try to teach, and what we try to teach and talk about on this channel is like, we try to have experts on who have completely different opinions, but like, listen to people who are specializing and certified and doing like tests and experiments that actually can give this information. As Nicole said, nutritionists aren't allowed to give out health advice, but they do. And there will always be people giving dangerous advice on the internet. Like, have you been on Pinterest? I saw something that was like, brush your teeth with lemon juice and you'll have white teeth. And I was like, girl, you will have no enamel. You will have no teeth. Like, you know, so just be extremely wary, ask your doctor, consult real experts in the field. Just because a lot of people follow, like even us, a lot of people will ask us like questions that we have no levels of addressing. I feel like it's more our initiative to teach people to be wary of fame and celebrity rather than trying to change like influencers from making dangerous decisions. Because there's so many people who are influencers. We can't control that, but we can control what we consume and what we believe.
Yeah, and I think like understanding too, like you said, that first of all, celebrities and influencers are just people. I think like we really get a sense of that living in LA. I think there's just, it's not as like this other world, like
Yeah,
you really see it. And I sometimes wish I could impart that on other
Whole
people.
Foods all the time.
Pardon?
Yeah, we see them at Whole Foods all the time.
Yeah. But it's like you really realize like, oh, this is just a person. I'm just a person. And sometimes I wish that we could like give that experience to people who really idolize and look up to these people to the point where it changes the way that they see things negatively. And so I think that was a really great point, Nisha. And then also when it comes to when those types of people who, like you said, are not experts, I think sometimes when they're talking about these things, it can really make you fearful. I know that for me, there was an influencer who was talking about hair loss. And that same week, someone on my YouTube videos had commented about my hairline because I have a square hairline. And of course, I know I've always had a square hairline my entire life. I remember being a little kid on the playground and wanting to have a ponytail that had like a circular line, whereas like mine goes like this. And I remember that as like a 5-year-old kid. My hair has always been that way. Hairlines come in all shapes and sizes, whatever. But still, like that comment where someone was like, you're a vegan and you're obviously losing your hair because of your hairline. And I know that's not true, but somehow that fear like gets planted. And then someone else who's on my computer screen is talking about hair loss and diet. And I'm like, somewhere in the back of the recesses of my mind is like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. Maybe my body's not converting those flax seeds to whatever ALAL.
I mean, fish.
I know, my body's not absorbing the nutrients. I need to take more, whatever. And I start freaking out. And then it's like, I feel fine. I'm fine.
It's kind of like what Miley talked about when she sees like all the magazines and she starts believing like, oh gosh, I need to start proving these things wrong because like I really starting to look pregnant. Like, you know, it's like, it's just the power of influence, whether it's from someone with no followers or someone with a big following. And I think when you follow someone, you feel like you know them, you know, like, but we know from being like intimate friends and like what we see of each other on the internet, it's very different. Like what we're going through every single day that we talk to each other and we cry on the phone about versus like what we're going through publicly. It's not the same. And when people make these statements, I feel like even I know how this feels when people start talking about something that's affecting them. And I feel so like close to these people. I start just like believing everything they're saying. And then when I put down my phone, I'm like, wait, what? You know, I would love to talk about like how we consume fame and celebrity and social media culture. Like when you guys look at something, just because we work in it and we are, I think, pretty aware. What is your thought process? What do you think? Do you text people? Do you have conversation? Do you look up their sources? Like, I would love to see what kind of like a big sister advice on someone who is, I don't know, young and impressionable, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like when an influencer I follow says something and I'm like, I don't know about that, I immediately like do research on it. I want to see both sides of it. Like if somebody says you can't mix retinol with hyaluronic acid, I immediately am Googling that. I want to see all of the stats. I want to see all of the studies. And
what a great example.
I also didn't know that.
That happens, like, because there's a lot of people out there that are skincare experts that are, again, just people who love skincare like myself. There was a time and place where even though I have done social media for years and years, I would trust a person and I would think, oh, that worked for them, it's going to work for me. And I would buy it like a coconut oil cleanser. It honestly ruined my life. I broke out so bad.
I remember I didn't wear sunscreen because an influencer was like, sunscreen is the devil's work. It will give you cancer. It doesn't, and they're like, and I got a full on melasma sun mustache. Wear your sunscreen, kids.
Wear your sunscreen. But like some people can slather coconut oil on their face and never break out. Like Jessie can do that, no problem. My skin is not that way. And so I've learned after even when it comes to makeup recommendations, and I know this when I give recommendations as well, that I'm going to recommend something that someone is not going to like. Like it's just a fact, which is why I always try to say like, this is why I like it, because my skin is like this. This is what I look for in this product. And if you like this, this, and this, you're not going to like this product because it's just a fact that people have different skin, people have different tastes. And so to just take one thing that somebody says as gold and believe everything that they say is dangerous. Like I really do a lot of research when it comes to shocking information that I receive like that. I want to see both sides of it.
What about you, Nikki?
So definitely that. I love that answer. I would say that I also I tend to talk to people in my real life who I think are kind of experts in these fields, and I don't just get one. I just don't ask one person. I usually ask several people. So like if I have a family member, like with Maddie's a great example. I reached out to Grace, right? We've had Grace on the show. She is a dietitian, plant-based dietitian. And I asked her and she was extremely helpful. I also asked my mom. I also asked my friend who's a scientist. I will pull the people I know and trust who I believe will have something to say. And it's like I don't necessarily take everything that everybody says as like, oh, well, my friend said this, so that's true. But I try to find like commonality and I find that being able to talk and like ask questions, because sometimes you hear these statements by influencers or by celebrities, and it's just such a small part of the information that they're relaying. Like Miley was like, I was so dried out because I can only eat so many avocados. And it was like, wait, what does that have to do? And then you have like, I'm the kind of person where I have a zillion follow-ups. So then I ask the people in my real life all those follow-ups, and luckily they don't get annoyed by my question.
Real quick, just an interjection on that. She's also said she only eats celery.
I know. And that she has fat thighs. I'm like,
fat thighs.
Okay, I have a theory about the fat thighs because I have followed Miley Cyrus for so long. I loved Hannah Montana, okay? Loved it.
I support that.
She has tweeted about having fat thighs so many times. I don't want to hear it anymore, Miley. I don't want to hear it, okay? I don't want to hear about the fat thighs.
Slim.
Stop focusing on your body and what it looks like.
Yeah.
More than your thighs.
Say about that.
I just have to say that it is almost always a trend in people that go back to being vegan. They have alienated certain foods from their diets, whether it's because they think it's a health thing or they think it's going to make them fat or whatever it is. Like when you aren't eating all of the vegan foods, you are definitely going to be missing out from some nutrients. Like just with Miley, for example, she is saying she needs omegas. That is in so many things. And if you're not eating chia seeds and flax seeds and nuts and, an avocado is your only source, like yes, you're going to be deficient. Absolutely. I feel like Nikki is such a good example of somebody who like tries to eat the rainbow. Like with your lunches, they're always very much like, you've got like cashews, you've got like veggies, you've got squash, you've got potatoes, you've got beans, you've got all of the things, so that like you're always incorporating all of those things. And it's like, there are days where all I eat is vegan junk food, and
Same.
yeah, but I know that the next time I eat, I need to just be more mindful of like, okay, like maybe have a smoothie with some flax seeds and some chia seeds today, and then, you know, maybe try to get some nuts in, maybe try to do this, like just mindfulness. Yeah, it's like,
I love that, Hannah, because it's like I think everyone too should just try to learn a little bit about plant-based nutrition, because it will really affect like how confident you feel when you do hear celebrities and influencers talking about making these dietary changes. Because for example, like having those healthy fats, like you said, like there's a whole section of veganism that is like super low fat. But when you learn about the science behind plant-based nutrition, you know that some vitamins are only fat soluble, and that your ability to absorb, you know, the nutrients in leafy greens is largely dependent on pairing them with fat. And of course you can have exorbitant amounts of fat, but like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And that balance is where you literally feel balanced, and then it makes it easier to feel good without trying as hard.
Yeah, I just also like when she said the celery made her thighs big, like, and because it drives me crazy because she's made comments like that constantly about her thighs, like as someone who's followed Miley Cyrus and loved her work in Hannah Montana, like the fat phobia of that comment and kind of the underlying message of it, like I really hated that, because like fat does not mean unhealthy, like, and fat does not mean, as she said, she has to be an athlete, she has to experiment with these kind of things. Fat does not mean not athletic and not strong, like, and not able to perform. Like look at Lizzo, who is so like, have you seen her workouts? That woman is strong, okay? And that woman is singing. Yeah, her performances, singing, plays the flute, whips it out, goes dances. Like, come on, okay, Miley, you try to play the flute, okay? Like, that's hard. But it's just, I don't like these fallacies of alluding to like what your body looks like having any effect, because that is dangerous. Because when I think about celebrities and when I consume fame and celebrity culture and social media, like we are, I'm not saying we're celebrities, but social media people, celebrities, we have a platform, and people have a platform and give advice from that platform are essentially a type of journalist. Journalists are not experts. We're relaying information we have heard. But like, as you can tell, even the New York Times, journalists can be biased. Like even a publication that is so famous for not being biased, we have a bias when we talk about stuff on this channel. Like we are really biased against like certain types of activism, and we really want a certain type of activist, and like that's our little niche, and like that's what we like. But we're just journalists. And like the skincare experts you're talking about, Hannah, such a good example, because they are not dermatologists, they are journalists, and they do gather information and present it to a public. But as the public, with any kind of like journalist, I guess you can say Miley is kind of like a journalist because she does have a platform and she's relaying information. You have to realize, what are your sources? What is your motive? Are you getting money from this? Like, it's, look at people's motives, look at their backings, and check their sources, because like, we're not experts. We're literally just people. And I think looking at, when I like am on my phone and I'm looking at it, I'm just always like, this is journalism, and that's something I have to tell myself, otherwise it can start getting to my brain and I start believing everything.
Totally. And there's so much to consume too that it gets overwhelming sometimes. But I would love to talk about why you guys think it's always fish and eggs. Like we almost always joke about it because we're like, oh, it's fish and eggs again, like fish and eggs, like it's literally always
like one word.
We'll like trip, and the other one will be like, are you okay? You need to start eating fish and eggs. Like, are you okay? It's kind of become a joke between us.
It's become the new B12 joke. Like you used to be like, oh, I'm tired. Did I take my B12 today? It's like, oh, do you need some fish and eggs? You're a little behind today.
Well, and if you guys watching would like us to bring on experts in dietetics, we are more than happy to. We'd love to do an episode on why they would think it's always fish and eggs. So yeah, definitely comment down below if you're interested in that. But yeah, what do you guys think?
My personal thought, just off of how my brain worked before I went to before I was completely vegan, I transitioned, kind of like slowly started cutting out certain meats. And in my mind, I just justified that fish were less sentient and that eggs didn't hurt anybody because chickens were going to lay them anyways. And those were the last two things that I cut out. And even pescatarian is the name of a diet. It's like pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan. Like in my mind, it was like, oh, I've done so much. I'm almost there. I'm almost vegan. I'm pescatarian now. And I think there's something to that because it always seems to be like the first thing that people go back to.
Yeah, it bothers me a lot just because, like, as a journalist with a platform, I'm saying this, but I read a lot about like how most of the oxygen that we're breathing comes from phytoplankton in the ocean, and it's dangerously at risk because of how many fish we're farming or just catching in the wild. And really, like, promoting fish as a responsible, ethical choice is pretty iffy because, like, as you said, they are sentient, like it's been proven. But even if you don't care about that,
which is speciesist,
which isn't nice, but even if you don't care about that, like our ecosystem is so in danger. Like it's said that every purchase of sea or aquatic animals depletes the balance that is like impacting how with the air we breathe on land. And so like it really bothers me when people do promote that stuff because it's not it, man.
93% of the plastic in the ocean is from fishing nets. So I'm pretty sure that's the right statistic. Again, I'm just a journalist.
Journalism.
But like to say that it's like the least harmful way to consume animal products is just not true. Again, on what I was saying about like people just not like feeling like they're as sentient, I think it's so easy for someone to look at a cow and be like, that looks like a dog. That is a fluffy animal I would like to pet, that I can pet, and I probably have pet before. Same thing with like chickens. Like most people have seen a chicken in real life and you can hold a chicken. And pigs, of course, so similar to dogs. And most people have seen a pig and love pig videos. But I think there's just less of a connection to fish unless you're like a scuba diver and you're around fish all the time. Most of your interactions with fish are just maybe seeing them in the occasional aquarium or koi pond.
Did you see in our I think it was our Facebook group, someone commented, Pablo the blowfish died in vain. I couldn't stop laughing. That was the first thing I thought of when I heard the news, and I wish I had brought that up because I did think about Pablo the blowfish.
I know.
You know how people do this thing where they essentialize certain nutrients where it's like chicken is protein, bananas are carbs, or like some people are like bananas are sugar. I think people think fish are omegas.
Yes.
And you have to do, so I think that's one of the reasons that they go to fish is because it's like, they're like, well, it's not that I need protein. I know that I can get protein on a vegan diet, but I need omegas because I'm not getting enough omegas. So then it's like they have no choice but to go to fish. So I think maybe some of what you said and maybe a little of that, I don't know, I'm just hypothesizing. But I also think like for me.
I think that's a really good point.
Sorry?
I think that's a really good point because like, I used to think that way, and like I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that is totally true because omegas are like essential for brain health and all these other things. And yeah, I did think like chicken, protein, like lettuce, greens, or like whatever. But like from that logic, pea has vitamin C in it, but I'm gonna eat an orange. Like I'm good, you know. Like urine can be very high in vitamin C. You know?
Yeah, well, diet culture kind of teaches us that like this reductionist approach when it comes to food.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I just saw Hannah like go out of frame. And I was like, oh, I made a joke.
Learn something new.
If you're ever out in the wild, naked and afraid style.
Just smeared on my face.
The vegan view goes camping. Nikki's like, and I quit.
Diet culture, though, teaches reductionism when it comes to food. So it's like we reduce a food that has a bunch of different nutrients and health benefits to one thing. And so I think we do that with fish too, because people don't say, I'm going to eat eggs and pigs. Like it's always eggs and fish because it's like this omega thing, I think. And then with eggs too, I think it's like the idea that it does less harm, like you said. But ever since, especially, we did that why we don't eat eggs video, which we should link below because I feel like there was a lot of good stuff in that one. But when researching that and I saw the chicken ovary with eggs in it, I can't unsee that. I cannot unsee that. And so for me,
if you're a person who has a period, you felt that. Like, I know you felt that. Like, if you see that picture, you feel it. I also think that people think fish because just it's kind of just a society thing, culture. They're like healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy.
I follow people who are like not vegan, but they're very health oriented. And it just kind of seems like a trend in the health and wellness space that like fish and eggs are kind of like glamorized as like the healthy.
And doctors love fish. Like if I tell them I'm vegan, they're like, but you still eat fish, right? That's really healthy. Like, I don't know, like, no, that's not what that means. It's just so a part of our culture to think fish is very, very healthy, you know? Yeah. And I think people, especially suffering like from health issues like Miley, like Maddie, will tend to gravitate towards that because of influence.
One thing I wanted to get your opinion on is when celebrities do come out and say that the vegan diet wasn't healthy for them and they had to go back to eating fish and eggs, and then your non-vegan friends bring that up to you, how do you guys deal with that? Because I feel like I always kind of dread when this is a headline because I feel like I'm going to have more explaining to do. And like, how do you guys deal with that?
I think especially when I was younger, a lot of my identity was tied to like what my friends thought about me. And in regards to like how I dressed or how I ate, I really wanted their approval. And I think it's just because I'm getting closer to 30. I think I'm just like, I'm in my late 20s now. So I'm just growing. No, but I do think as you get older, you realize like what makes other people happy and give you approval is sometimes not the same thing that makes you happy. And so like, I really don't care what my friends think. Like they could think I just like mow my lawn and eat the grass clippings all day. And like, I don't care. Like, I'm like, cool. Do you want to go to brunch? Like it just does
such a visual example.
I think, yeah, it's just about being so confident in what you know. And it's just about like, you know, I think there's always going to be that thing when a celebrity comes out with something like this that makes, like Nikki said, that makes you kind of fearful. Like, am I crazy? Am I insane for thinking that I don't need fish and eggs? And I think it's just about like, nope, you know, go watch a video, go read some more information, just refresh that memory as to why you don't eat fish and eggs. And then you really, it doesn't take very long for you to be like, duh, I don't need fish and eggs. Like, look at what I eat every day. I get all the omegas, like probably too much omegas. I'm peeing omegas. And then I'm getting vitamin C because I drink it.
I love this joke.
I'm caffeinated.
This is kind of just a little nerdy information, but there's a lot of research with like enmeshment and female friendships or female identifying friendships. Like we tend to have a lot more power, ability to take social cues and assimilate. And that's why a lot of like mental health issues that were only studied on men are diagnosed mostly on men, like, well, with things like autism and ADHD and depression, all these other things that were studied on men are underdiagnosed in women because we have like a certain, I think it's prefrontal cortex, I don't know, it's been a long time, but we're really good at taking social cues and mimicking them. And that's something that characterized a female identifying brain. And so I think it's a good thing to be aware of, like how much of your personality do you really like? I like to really question these things, like journal about it, think about it. When you have a little meditation time, think about what you like. What do you really want to be? Who are you? Is it really just who your friends are? Because I know we're so influential around each other, but spending some time alone and figuring out like I'm just so confident in my veganism because I know it's so independent from my friends and it's a part of like NISHA and like my heart and what matters to me. So nothing they really, and while I can be like, yeah, I don't give a shit what they say. It's because it's not that I don't give a shit about what they say about anything in my life, but I do value my opinion about my veganism more than my not-vegan friends' opinion about my veganism.
Right. It's like, you know you've done the research, and you know what you know, and you know that they haven't seen or learned even half of the stuff that you have. So of course they're going to watch one interview and be like, oh, being vegan's bad for your brain, better watch out. And it's like, nah, I'm eating more than avocados and celery, so I think I'm good.
And I totally agree. I think one thing is like having conviction in the research and what you know, but I also loved what you said, NISHA, about like figuring out what you like and why. And I think that's why I was just talking to a friend of mine about who you follow online, and I know this is talked about a lot, but I think thinking about it in that way, it's like a lot of times when you're the only vegan that you know, and then you hear this celebrity has decided that they're not vegan, and you start getting questions about it, you start to feel like you're crazy. That's why I think it's so important to follow people who have the same sort of like information that you do, and like following other vegans. Because when I was the first vegan when I was the only vegan I knew in my friendship circle, like I still didn't feel like I was that weird, because I was like, no, there's a lot of people that do this. And that just knowing that people live their lives the way I was living my life on a daily basis, and seeing them healthy and thriving really helped to counter that for me. And so I would say just take a look also at like, not you guys, but like if anyone's feeling that way, like take a look at who you're following, and like do they help make you feel good about your choices?
Yeah, I think it's just about having confidence in your decision, which just comes with time sometimes. Like I know when I was first vegan, if somebody would have said that to me, I would have been like, oh, like, you know, tried to like reiterate facts and like gotten nervous and things like that. And it's just like, you don't need to prove yourself to anybody. You know what's best for you, and like that's that.
Yeah. And just because people are asking questions doesn't mean that you have to be the one that teaches them and provides all the answers. Like you can point them into the direction of another expert or something instead of shouldering that burden. I think like young vegans, or new vegans, I mean, feel that they have to be like a spokesperson, and that can be really overwhelming. And so just sometimes realizing that like you don't have to have all the answers in order to be a vegan.
Totally. Yeah. Like I don't want to be getting into debates on facts with you about like what's healthier. I don't. So I won't.
Absolutely. You are worthy of peace, whether that be justifying your veganism or justifying any other aspect of your life. You're worthy of peace. You don't have to prove your decisions to other people. And like when we do try to prove our decisions to other people, and like as you've seen Miley Cyrus on the Joe Rogan podcast, sometimes we can make uneducated claims. So it's sometimes more powerful to sit in your silence and ask them questions back, or tell them where they can find the information. Don't be shy of guarding your peace.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. Hope you guys found it helpful. We love having these conversations with each other, and we really wanted to bring it to you guys and hopefully make you feel a little less alone. But let us know in the comments down below what your reaction was when you found out that either Miley Cyrus or Maddie Lymburner was no longer vegan. We'd love to hear what your thoughts were. And don't forget to smash that like button if you liked this episode. Subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your friends. It helps us out a lot. Join our Facebook group. Like we said in this episode, it is such a great sounding board and a good place to vent and not feel alone when it comes to things like this. Subscribe to our individual channels. And what else?
We'll see ya next time.
Monday.
We'll see you on Monday.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Let's get COVID tests and drive to Vermont.
I want to do that so bad.
Okay, let's do it. I feel like I was in your mouth.
Do you want to be?
No, you guys.
No, there's urine in there.